All right, so just wanted to work out some more examples using the quadratic formula. So here is our lovely formula. And then if we were asked to solve this equation, looking for the two solutions, or maybe just one, depends on kind of what it is. Remember, we have three different options, because if we were to graph what's called a quadratic equation, remember a quadratic, the reason we know it's called quadratic is because we see that x squared term. We have a few different options. We might have two solutions. We might have just one, just one solution if that just barely touches the x-axis. And then we might have no solutions. That is what we're solving for. That is what the quadratic formula is going to give us. That's why we have this x equals, that x value will represent potentially the multiple or just one or no solutions of that quadratic graph. And by solutions, remember that also means x-intercepts or roots. All of those terms are interchangeable. Solutions, x-intercepts, and roots. So, remember, basically we need to be in this format, ax squared plus bx plus c equal to 0. So it looks like we're set up and ready to go. If we're not in this format, you will not have the correct a, b, and c values, so you need to make sure that you have the proper a, b, and c, and that we're set equal to 0, so that you can identify what these three letters are. So a is the coefficient of x squared. So if this is x squared, the coefficient here, or number in front of x squared, is just 1. B is the coefficient, or number in front of x. So b is a minus 3. Remember to keep the sign consistent. And then c is the value that's left on its own at the end. So c here is a negative 2. All right, so plugging all of these into the formula, we have x equals, we literally just replace this formula, copy it down, except substituting in b, a, and c when we get there. So this begins with negative b. So if I have a negative 3, negative b would be the opposite of negative 3, which is a positive 3. And then you have the plus or minus symbol. Don't forget both plus and minus. And then we need the square root of b squared. I would always put b in brackets. So minus 3 in brackets squared minus 4 times a times c, which I normally just use brackets to represent. All right, so there are values there. This fraction line means that everything on the top is divided by 2 times the number a, which is 1. Normally we would say negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. Everything on the top is divided by 2 times the number or letter a. All right, again, remember we want to start with the square root. We always want to start here. It's the easiest way to simplify this. So I'm bringing this over to the side. I have the square root minus 3 squared. Remember, there's a reason I put this in brackets, because anything squared is that number by itself. This is the same thing as minus 3 times minus 3, which gives us a positive 9. So this minus 3 squared becomes 9. And then when I'm multiplying here, I always count the negatives first. So I have 1, 2 negatives. If I have an even number of negatives that I'm multiplying together, that will give me a positive overall. That's always the first thing that I do when I'm multiplying this bit of the equation right here. See if it's positive or negative first, and then find out the actual number value. So now I have 4 times 1 times 2. 4 times 1 is 4, times 2 is 8. All right, so let's simplify. 9 plus 8 underneath the square root is 17. That is a surd that cannot be simplified, so we can't really do much with that there. All right, so I'm going to go back to our original equation and recopy everything down, except instead of writing all of this, obviously, now I have the square root of 17. And then we're all divided by 2 times 1, which is 2. A common mistake is that people like to shorten this fraction line. So just make sure you keep it extended the entire way through your working out. It should always be everything divided by 2. So the last thing for us to do is to simplify. All right, so you could leave your answer like that if they had asked you to. However, they ask, I think, for either a number of, it says 3 significant figures. There it is. 3 significant figures. That means I need to type all of this into the calculator. So taking out our calculator, let's see. So we have 3 plus square root of 17. I usually just enter it like that. And then I hit divide by 2 because, or you could do brackets, I guess. It kind of just depends, but I usually do it like that. And then I'll hit this button to change it into a decimal. So I'll have 3.56. Remember, that's only one of our answers. 3 plus the square root of 17, all divided by 2, would be 3.56. And then what I can do from here is edit this answer to change this into a minus. Remember, that's what that plus or minus symbol means. I know that might be something that's new to you, but it means that we split up our answer into 2 different options. And notice, it's not going to give us just the same value, one positive version and one negative version. Notice that it gives you an entirely different answer. Because if you think about it, it is an entirely different kind of calculation. Because this is 3 plus the square root of 17, all divided by 2. And then 3 minus the square root of 17, all divided by 2. It's not just this positive, this negative. That wouldn't make sense, right? So we have 2 answers. And remember, I always want you to connect back because this will become more important as we move forward. Always connect back that these represent the 2x values of where our graph would touch the x-axis. That is very, very important. So these are the 2 x-intercepts of the graph. So the 2 locations where y is equal to 0, the x value is this, and the x value is this, here and here. All right?